Parents waiting for schools in Liverpool's one thing, and many people are still waiting for work to replace dangerous cladding on their flats. That's in the aftermath, of course, of the Grenfell Tower disaster. Government figures suggest nearly 4,000 residential buildings across the country have unsafe cladding, and work to fix those cladding problems has been done at about a fifth of those. But 2 years ago, the government estimated there could actually be more than 8,500 buildings between 11 and 18 metres high. Well, Josh has been living in temporary accommodation since October after the fire service said his block was dangerous. Others haven't been able to sell theirs.
You live with that every day, and you do remember what happens in Grenfell, and it does go through your memory, and you think, what if it's us next time?
And I have wanted to try and sell the property for quite some time, but then Grenfell happened and flats were valued at zero. We were innocent. We didn't know anything about this when we bought these properties.
Well, Giles Grover lives in a block in Castlefield in Manchester that has now been fixed, thankfully, and he hasn't had to pay, but he still campaigns on the issue. Giles, thank you very much. We heard from Josh there. It's an extremely difficult situation for so many people still. Why is this all taking so long, do you think?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the programme. I think the simple point is that it's all very complicated. It's been 7 years since Grenfell. The law changed 2 years ago, but the problem is that buildings just aren't being made safe on the ground at any real pace. There's a lot of different funding schemes. There's different protection in place for different leaseholders, but the problem is that the government will say there's a route to remediation for these buildings. That's in philosophical, theoretical, notional values that there might be, but unfortunately that's different to actually getting the money on the ground, making the building fully safe at pace as quickly as we need so we can just move on with our lives.
And you are still campaigning, even though your situation thankfully has been sorted out. What are people saying to you?
Yeah, so just for clarity, my situation has sort of been sorted out. We've had 3 years of work here. Most of the problems have been fixed, but we've still got the developer to come and fix the remaining problems. So we're in a better position now. But this is the same issue for people across the country, that they'll get funding for some issues. Then they're told you might have to pay for balconies, you might have to pay for internal compartmentation. The problem is that the government, it's done something. It's created a building safety fund, but that's not a building safety fund. We're essentially calling it a building half safety fund because there's still a range of issues that aren't funded. We've shown them how to actually get that funding and make sure the buildings can be made safe in one go. They just need to listen to us, really. So
are you finding that people still are out of money?
Yeah, people have spent money over the last 7 years. They've probably spent different amounts on whether it's Waking Watch, whether it's buildings insurance. As one example, quite typical, my building, I used to pay £300 a year. I'm now paying £1,400 a year for buildings insurance. So we've lost money. We've been told we're not going to get that back. It's the impact to our mental health as well. It's the impact on people's life choices. They're just not able to move on with their lives, and they're still trapped, and the government knows it.
Giles, we really thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
So, Mike, the government, to be fair, has given substantial amounts of money, but there are still huge ongoing concerns here.
Yeah, I think there are, and I think what Giles said is absolutely right at the start of his piece there, is that it is very complicated. The Building Safety Act there's funding in place from the Building Safety Fund. The Building Safety Act itself means that there are options available now for leaseholders and local authorities to take freeholders and developers through a process to force them to do the work they need to do to improve the cladding situation. Lots of freeholders and developers will do it because it's the right thing to do, but unfortunately some don't. And when you've got to go through a legal process and take them to a tribunal to get the outcome that needs to be had in most of these situations, unfortunately that does take time because it is a legal process, and no legal process is unfortunately quickly.
I mean, that's going to be cold comfort, I suppose, to people that are living in a flat with dangerous cladding.
It is. I mean, I represent thousands of leaseholders. I'm a leaseholder, and myself, I live in an affected building. But, you know, what happened in my experience is, you know, sadly the case in lots of cases here. The building I live in qualified for funding because it was 6 stories. The building next door in the same development, which was 5 stories, didn't, and there was that. There's also an issue here about people being left in limbo. People can't remortgage, people can't move away, people can't sell the properties, and that's a real issue here. And the work that Giles and End Our Cladding Scandal and organisations like Liverpool, Manchester Gladiators are doing is absolutely fantastic. The government have moved, but it's been too little, too late.
Too little, too late. Are people losing faith that the government can actually deliver on the things that they promised to deliver on?
Well, I think the steps that have been taken have shown that the government have taken this issue seriously. There's been funding made available, there's been legislation passed in Parliament so that there's a process to go through to force developers, to force freeholders to take the action that they need to take. But the reality is it is complicated, just as Giles said, as he's experienced, that it is a complicated situation and there is no easy answer to this particular problem, I don't think.
But what there needs to be is looking at the whole issue of leasehold, and there needs to be fundamental leasehold reform. That's
which the government did announce.
They're not going far enough on this. There needs to be fundamental reform of leasehold as a form of land ownership. That's something that's not being considered by government.
OK. All right. Thank you both very much.